opposite entrepreneur, Joel.
Thank you for having me. That was a nice intro. Most people just read the one that is there. You put your own spin on that. I love it.
Dude, this is the opposite entrepreneur, brother. We watch the masses and do the opposite.
I love it.
Everyone does it this way. We do it the other way.
Case in point, everyone.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, I'm excited for today. I mean, we had a chance to, connect earlier and, learned a lot about, your experiences and the things that you've gone through. And I know our listeners are going to gain a lot of knowledge. I know I'm going to be gaining a ton of knowledge from your experiences and look forward to hearing not only what you've done, but where you're going. I mean, you've got a lot of cool things that are happening. And even today, you have like a film crew in your house because you're doing a documentary.
Yeah. That's these are like the days of filming, I think, are some of the happiest of my life, which is maybe telling me something I'm not listening enough to. Right now, the documentary stuff is just sort of a passion, but when you're doing something and you're just in that zone and you're loving it so much, you're like, wait a second, maybe this is like the bliss I should follow. Not but what we're doing is we filmed a travel film pre-COVID, and we went to Vietnam with our kids, Vietnam, Lebanon, the Yukon, Argentina, Colombia, and Taiwan. And then COVID hit and the whole thing kind of got shut down, and we ended up moving to a farm. And after, I don't know, 8 months, we're like, you know what? We should add this into the film. So today's the first day of capture. We had to wait for some sunshine. And if you know anything about the wet coast, as they sometimes call it, sometimes you have to wait a little while for the sunshine.
So whereabouts are you filming from?
So for all your listeners who are familiar with Vancouver, we're about 90 minutes east of Vancouver, which is in this just beautiful, it's all a valley. It's just this lush farming valley, but there's these massive sort of 4,000 to 8,000 foot peaks that surround the valley. And we're at like just the very end of it. So right up against some of these beautiful mountains.
So where are you guys at right now, weather-wise? Are you guys still in like ski season, spring ski season, or is it mud season? What do you guys have going on?
Oh, it's mud season. I think up in Whistler, they're probably still skiing because they can get up pretty high in the glacier. My friend, he just texted me from, he's not in Boulder, he's somewhere near Boulder, and they just got a dump of snow today. And I'm like, oh man. I was thinking Boulder was ideal, and now I'm like, snow in May? I don't know.
I know. I'm with you. I actually went to college in New Hampshire, so I had free skiing all 4 years. But I can tell you this, when I left, I was done with the cold weather. I just, just experiencing 20 below and, all of that stuff and carrying everything and having to wear layers upon layers. I know everyone's like, I love winter. Why? Because I can wear layers and be warm enough. In the summer, I can't take off enough and I'm sweating. I'm like, give me the sweating all day long. I travel now that when I travel I do surf trips. My kids have, I have a 19-year-old, 18-year-old, 11-year-old. My kids I've never taken them skiing. And I grew up skiing all my life, out the West Coast, all that kind of stuff. I'm like, nah, boys and girls, we're going warm. We're going warm.
It's really interesting. Like you and I were talking before, and we talked about the importance of seasons, both personally, but also literally. Like literally, the seasons kind of move us energetically, with our motivations and everything through the years. And there's these wonderful moments as you shift from one season to the next, and you feel that rest in winter, that calling for rest, and you feel that renewed spirit in spring. But at the same time, it's like, I'm pretty sure I'd just rather it be warm all the time. Like I just want to go somewhere, because if I like weigh it out, I'm like, I'm pretty sure I feel better in the sun than I do in the cold and the wet, regardless of how great its season transformation feels, So I think you got the right idea. Surf trips and moving south. I'm not sure if that's public knowledge, but
moving south.
There's vitamin D, man. You got to keep going.
Exactly. It's funny because, being around people that love skiing and all that kind of stuff, everyone's personality just totally elevates and their energy level elevates when it's spring. And then it gets into summer. And I said to myself, why? Why not just experience this more and more throughout the year? Hence the reason why we're moving south.
Yeah.
So totally excited about that. So you said like right now your passion is doing this documentary and traveling and whatnot. How about when you were growing up? What was one of your passions growing up?
I mean, it's sort of I don't know if it's a lame passion. It certainly didn't win me any friends, but I was the runner geek. I was the David Goggins runner geek, before before it was ever maybe cool. And so I played a lot of sports, but when I realized that I was better at running and not getting any taller or bigger for basketball, football, I literally threw myself into this sport. And when I was 13, 14, I was running 50, 60 miles a week. By the end of high school, I was running 80, 90 miles a week. I was napping. I was having ice baths. I wouldn't go out to parties because I'd have a run at 6 a.m. the next morning. And I had this sort of love-hate relationship with it because I loved this sort of animal feeling of just power and strength, and my feet hitting the ground, hill and dale or around a track or whatever. But it was so hard, right? It was so hard. And the dedication was and there was so much isolation from my friends. And it was almost like it almost like fueled the anger of like being a social outcast to some extent, because I was a runner, just like fueled my running. And I was planning to, when high school was done, I ended up going to North Carolina on a scholarship, but I said, if that didn't happen, I was actually just going to move to Ethiopia or Kenya. Like, that's how passionate I was about the sport. And then I tore my Achilles, and then I just had injury after injury after injury. I said to the point where I was anorexic because I had, as you mentioned, I'd gone to the World Youth Games, and I saw all these Kenyans and Ethiopians, and I all of a sudden had body dysmorphia. I felt fat. I was 123 pounds as I'm 5'7", 5'8", and I felt overweight.
Wow.
And obviously I got smoked by these guys, so I correlated the two together, and so I became anorexic, and I dropped another sort of 7-8 pounds, which I didn't have to lose. And what ended up happening was it weakened my body so much that it couldn't sustain the mileage, and I just kept these injuries just mounted, and to the point where I couldn't do it anymore mentally because of it all. So what was really good kind of went the gamut to the other side pretty quick.
What about today? Are you running today?
A little bit, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was just curious. Like I was curious. I think running, honestly, is the hardest thing to do, because I played ice hockey too growing up. Now, obviously we have sprints and we go hard for like 30 to 60 seconds, but then we sit down. Running, you can't glide. You just have to keep on going.
Yeah.
And it's just, you're either going to stop and you can walk. Yeah, you can walk, but you don't want to do that. That's the challenge. I just think running from a mental perspective, it helps me, push myself, and I almost compete against myself while I'm running. It's like, hey, you know what? Can't stop, can't slow down, got to hustle and whatnot. So how did you overcome that setback? This happened in college. I mean, you're younger. How did you overcome this?
Time.
Yeah.
Time. I
Time
think.
heals all wounds.
Yeah. It was a good experience in that it pushed me out into the world. And how did it do that? Was through this sort of need to run away after it. I was so ashamed by the fact that I was no longer a runner. And the more I kind of learn about it, I think that that's something a lot of athletes end up struggling with, whether you played college football, college basketball, and maybe you weren't able to go to the next level like you dreamed. And then you have this identity crisis. What do I do next? Who am I outside of this sport that I'm really good at? And it's really hard and it's really real. And I don't think it's appreciated enough if we're talking about, mental health and preparing the youth for that moment in their life if it happens. But that's an aside. So I ended up freaking out. I hitchhiked across Canada. I'm painting myself as this like person who just keeps freaking out, but I ended up hitchhiking across Canada, and I ended up in Asia for a while, in Europe for a while. And I sort of found myself and found who I could be out there in the world, just by seeing all the possibility and all the opportunity. And that led to starting Naked, actually, when I was down in South America.
What year was that?
Oh God. 08. I think by this point it's 08. This is sort of a multi-year journey. I'd come back home and I'd bartend or landscape to make a bit of money. And there's like this void that I just kept trying to fill. I'm sure you know all about this, Mike. I'm sure your guests have, talked about it, where you're doing, is it the right thing for the wrong reasons? It's the right thing to go out there and explore and be curious about your life and try things. But the void that running left, which was this void of insecurity and this void of self issues around self-worth, and needing to do the entrepreneurship, needing to do something to fill the void, was not the long-term solution to my problem, but it certainly was the short-term solution. It gave me something else to latch onto. And then eventually I had to learn what was actually going on, and start to heal those motivations. Because if you are not healing those things, they just keep manifesting in different ways in your life. This manifests in sometimes it manifests in leaving your relationship. It manifests, whether, it's via an affair, or you just think there's something better down the line. You're just trying to fill a void with everything. You're not in your body, and you're not being present in your life. It's always next, because you think that's the solution to, what's now. So that took a long time. That took 10 years to kind of get there.
That's incredible. Where did your entrepreneurial spirit drive come from?
Well,
that family?
No, yeah, a little bit. I think that I was born with it to an extent. You're born with, some people go into an office and they're like, yes. And some people go into an office and you're just like, no, no, it's not for me. So I'm sure you're laughing like, that, right? I think that part's not learned. That was just it. I think the running piece, you mentioned it, you're just out there in your own head, and there's nobody's hand on your back. You determine the outcome of your success as a runner. And I think that played into what may have already been there. And, my dad was a musician, trying to make it as a musician. There's entrepreneurship in art and artists. And my mom, she wasn't to college. She didn't go to college. And so she just started her own business. These are just little things that you kind of see, and it's like, oh, that's possible. So I think it all just added up.
Yeah. No, I love it. In terms of, so you founded Naked. What did you have any experience in like clothing or anything like that? I mean, what triggered you to create this product, and what is the product? And I would love a little background too on how this whole thing comes together, and then eventually you go and become a public company. I mean, amazing.
Yeah, the way it all comes together is just so, just piecemeal, right? Like, it's just like, oh, or maybe not piecemeal, but you just accidentally are public. You're accidentally in an underwear business. I had no apparel experience. I had very little business experience. I had done my business 101 class, and I had started a boot camp. That's the extent of my business experience pre-naked. And I'm in Peru, and I'm actually filming a documentary that is now the same one we're talking about today, but it was totally different and it totally failed. And I needed some underwear. And so I went to the street vendor and I bought this beautiful Pima cotton underwear. And so for those of your guests who don't know what Pima cotton is, it's like this luxurious Peruvian cotton that just feels like almost like silk. It's so soft. And then I was like, wow, this is better than any the crap my mom ever bought me. You know, that Fruit of the Loom, like, or like Gap, stiff cardboard Gap or boxer shorts, like, you know, right. And then I hike up Machu Picchu in them, and I'm like, you know, that doesn't really perform. And so it's where like these things start tying together, that I was like, okay, so when I was running, you'd use these like really great spandexes, but they weren't soft. And like, how do I put the softness of this Pima cotton and the technical function of the running products together to make this underwear that was so comfortable you couldn't feel it, hence the name Naked. And so I go home and I literally take a bunch of this underwear with me. I'm lugging underwear around South America in a backpack, right? Unopened. And I just start asking people, do you know anyone who sews? Do you know any factories? Do you know any design students? You know, we're early days internet. We're like, in terms of social media and all these things, like you're just kind of pulling favors to try and get where you want to go. And it wasn't very long. It was like literally the blink of an eye. And next thing you know, I got this pair of underwear that truly feels like you're not wearing it when you wear it. And there's a story about that. But I was so convinced that I'd struck gold that I took it onto Canada's version of Shark Tank called Dragon's Den. And I got absolutely torn to shreds, just eaten alive, because I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I just thought I had done the whole thing by making a pair of underwear, right? And with a great name. So anyway, that's sort of how the beginnings of it happened.
I gotta know, how much was the underwear that you bought in Peru?
Oh, it was under $3 a pair, for sure. Right. And we're talking like under $3 a pair. And that's the most premium underwear in this whole place that I'm shopping. Right. So it was a good deal.
I can imagine. So you take this business now, you're starting in your living room, and then you're bringing it to the Nasdaq stock market. And also, I do want to point out too, to our listeners, hey guys, he didn't know anything about the industry. He didn't know anything about, you know, how to business savviness or anything like that. Had zero experience, but he had an idea, a dream, and knew that there was a problem and he could be a solution to it. And he surrounded himself with the people that can do it. Just remember, you just do it. You had action behind it. You went and executed and you figured it out. It's just like I tell my kids, guys, every day, the most important thing is that you can be a solution to a problem. And if you can accomplish anything that you want. And that's exactly what you did. So what was it like? I mean, you're in your living room and then you're going to the NASDAQ. Are you ringing the bell?
Well, we did. So
that's cool.
The living room story is actually, I love, it's like one of those moments that I recall so fondly in my life. And I'm sure yourself and some of the other entrepreneurs that listen to the show may relate. It's like, I had a roommate, we had a crappy divey apartment, and we literally turned everything but the kitchen and the bathroom into an office. It was just an entrepreneur's workspace. And we had whiteboards. We had those like Rubbermaid tables. There was no kitchen table. There was just office tables. And it was like, if we ate working. Like that was like just a glorious time of exploring what it was that we could do and how we could make money and different things like that. And so, yeah, we rang the bell at Nasdaq. So we actually, the route that we went public was we went public via reverse merger, which is where you roll into another company. So it's almost like an acquisition, except for the company that acquires you disappears. It dissolves afterwards, right? So you're the surviving entity, a reverse takeover, if you will. And so we did a reverse takeover onto the over-the-counter stock market, which is a very junior exchange. You know, it's not, nobody ever talks about it, but there's tons of companies and tons of opportunity on this exchange. And a lot of micro cap, nano cap type companies like Naked was. And it was the only way I could raise money. I'd done the Dragon's Den, I'd failed. We'd raised a little bit of money privately, but I didn't know how to raise money. So some stock promoters, you know, which is sort of a dangerous word, they saw the company and they liked the name and the potential, and they said, well, we'll fund you, but you have to go public. Mike, I didn't even know what that meant when they said, I didn't know what going public meant. My parents didn't have money. They didn't have stockbrokers, and they didn't trade stocks on any markets, period. Right. It was not, you know, it was not something I grew up with. So I didn't even know. I just said, yes, sure. That sounds great. I need money. And so next thing you know, we're public. Fortunately, my business partner was an accountant, and so he kind of quickly learned the ropes of public company accounting, US and Canada. And then we, you know, years later, about 3 years later, we uplisted onto the Nasdaq. But it wasn't until 2 years after that that we actually got to ring the bell. So
Oh, wow.
people thought when they saw us ring the bell that was like the first time that we were public and on Nasdaq. We'd already been public for like 5 years and been on the Nasdaq for 2 years. And it kind of shows you that like that overnight success is a myth. Like all they see is that one moment, and it's like, no, there's so much behind that. So
Yeah, I think too. And I mean, like the overnight success thing, you know, you look at it from, it's like social media, right? They paint this beautiful picture and they think like, oh, that's where they are, you know, that's where they start. Heck no. You know, I mean, it's just like my brother and I, we started in, you know, in my loft, and, you know,
yeah.
with $2,500 each, and we created the company, and, you know, here we are almost 20 years later, you know, but there was so much, you know, blood, sweat, tears, and, you know, getting up early, you know, going to bed late, doing all those things. And for you guys, you know, taking your house and living room and just decorating it with literally everything that has to do with the company. I mean, was there underwear everywhere too?
There was boxes of underwear. So my favorite day was always when the factories would send me stuff, and I'd get the package and I get to see what the next iteration of this looked like or that looked like. And so it was, I mean, I couldn't have had a wife and kids like I do now in that environment. That was like a very solo focus environment, like nothing else
Right.
mattered.
Right.
But it's good, man. And that's like what you talk about, Mike, is that there's no secrets to this other than what you just said. It's that level of commitment and work and sacrifice and dedication. It's the only path. You know, Joe Rogan always talks about it too. You know, from the comedy standpoint, it's like these guys are hustling for 20 years, working the door and then doing a 5-minute bit before you've seen 20 of their YouTube clips or whatever. They have a Netflix special. There's no overnight successes in comedy, and there's no overnight successes in business.
Totally agree. I will say that there is opportunities though with social media, as you see some of these guys. I'm thinking of the one guy that on TikTok that did the dreams with Fleetwood Mac on a skateboard going onto a highway in LA, and he's drinking ocean spray. And then all of a sudden this guy's career just takes off and he's just sponsoring everything. That's probably one of the only things, but 100% agreed. Nothing happens, you know, easily. And if it was easy, everybody would do it. Everybody.
Yeah. I mean, I totally agree. The viral nature of digital is true. I mean, you look at a Jake and Logan Paul, that's not the moment they're having now is 20 years earned. But some of these other guys are absolutely overnight. And the question I always ask, and like what I remind my my kids and everything about is, yeah, but that doesn't mean that they don't have 20 years of anguish and pain and struggle ahead of them. They got the success early, but now what do they do with that? And what does that look like? And
Yep.
maybe it's easy street. I don't know. I'm not viral successful, so I have no idea.
You would think with Naked though, I mean, I'm sure you had some pretty good success with just that name. You're big on objective-based branding. What is that, and what is the importance of developing that?
Yeah, more like objective based, like for your brand, for your business to be very
Okay.
objective based, right?
Sure.
If you're an objective, like a purpose based company, obviously your purpose is probably for good, or to plant more trees, or to take more plastic out of the ocean. But what I'm talking about when I talk about being objective driven is, a lot of people are like, okay, I'm going to start a business. Let's use apparel because that's, my world. And that's it. I'm going to start a clothing business. And I'm like, well, okay, so if I'm coaching somebody, I'm like, but what's the objective of your business? What are you aiming toward? What's your beacon that's helping you inform your decisions along the way? If you're climbing a mountain to get to the summit, your goal is that your objective is the summit, and the decisions that you make on that hike, what time you start the hike, when you're taking your water breaks, all these different things have to do with reaching the goal of the summit. If you're in a relationship and you want to get married and you want to have and build a successful life together, the objective is to build a successful life with somebody, and you make the decisions, the sacrifices along the way. And so often in business, people have this great idea. There's a lot of $1 million ideas out there. I think everybody's probably had one along the way. And some of people have even started them. But what are the objectives once you've got that idea that lead all your decision making as you grow this business? And so I'm really big on micro objectives and macro objectives. Here's where we're heading, and here are the little things that are going to get us there every single day, every single week, every single month. Have we hit them? Do we need to adjust? Do we need to pivot to make sure these objectives hit? And obviously, sometimes we can miss on the objectives. Things like COVID-19 could change a business's objectives, right? And so that's what I mean by that, is being really crystal clear on not just what you're doing, but why you're doing it and how you're doing it, and being laser focused on those elements. Does that kind of answer your question? Do I need to dive deeper?
That makes total sense. And what do you do to just even stay on track for something like that? People that struggle with focus and the shiny object syndrome. Look, entrepreneurs, right? I mean, we're a different breed. We're the ADHDers, like squirrel over here, and we're going over there because we have that $1 million idea and we're running for it. How do you keep them focused? In your coaching, and what are some of your strategies that our listeners can use, to improve in that area?
It's so funny because when I coach or consult with entrepreneurs, I'm really awesome at getting people focused. But then when I'm my own entrepreneur, it's like it's like really hard to do that. It's like, wait, I got to take my own damn advice. But we use a few different systems. So we have what are called rocks or milestones. And, this, for the life of me, I can't think about which book I got that from. I can't remember if it was the Intel guy, Andy. I don't know why his name's eluding me. It might have been him, the guy who ran Intel, which he's one of the greatest business operators of all time. And so these milestones we use, so that there's these macro milestones, like very big objectives that move the business materially forward, and then the micro objectives that help us get there, right? So if our macro objective is to open up, let's say Nordstrom's, for example, as a retail account, because of what that all means to the company, we do a daily huddle. Daily huddles usually only 15 minutes, where everybody just gets a chance to say what it is that they're working on today. How does, obviously, that task has to relate to the objective that individual is working on. And then we use a red light, yellow light, green light system. Usually it says, hey, red light, you're in trouble. You're not on path. How can the team support you, rally around you to get on path? Yellow, you're a little bit stuck, but you got it. Green, you're rocking. Everything's moving forward. And so we use these checkpoints and we try and use data to support them, whether that's, key performance indicators, et cetera. We try and just use the data to inform whether or not, because somebody can always say, yeah, I'm doing okay. I'm on path. It's like, okay, show how so that we know. And that system has been really effective for years. Whatever company I've been able to implement that with, it's worked.
That's great. And, I think that's solid information too. And I like the rocks and the milestones. I like how you use the micro and the macro objectives. You share, you're also an author too, as well.
Yeah.
Where you share your experiences, lessons learned and whatnot, called Getting Naked, the Bare Necessities of Entrepreneurship and Startups, which dives deep into unlocking your life's purpose without really, seeking burnout. How will Getting Naked help to turn a fixed mindset into a growth mindset?
Yeah. That the fixed helping turn somebody's mindset usually has to do with that person's level of anguish and struggle. Because everything I've found, myself included, is that most people don't change unless by not changing, their situation is worse, right? If the situation has to be so dire, your wife's going to leave you, your business is going to go under. So you just have to pivot on your strategy. Something like that is your pain, your depression, your anxiety is so fierce and all consuming that you have to make a change to move through this, or to be able to thrive more in your life. Because if you're kind of status quoing it and it's fine, I find people are pretty resistant to change. It takes that pain and that struggle to really inspire it. And so with that in mind, the book Getting Naked is a double entendre to getting the business naked to where it went from inception to sale of the company. But also the personal journey of an entrepreneur, from guy with, whole life dedicated to entrepreneurship, working 80 hours a week in his living room, his kitchen, wherever, to my marriage being on the rocks, to my not having seen my child for almost 2 years because I was traveling like 250 days a year, 200 days a year, visiting stores, visiting investors, and prioritizing them and everyone else. To the point where I was so sick, I was in hospital from, almost having like stomach pains and ulcers, and just being completely and utterly burnt out. Right. So what I hadn't done is balance, and I had to redefine success, and I had to redefine what mattered to me. And so my hope is that through the lessons I share of my own experience in the book, it can signal, if these things are happening for the entrepreneurs, it can signal that for them, and it can help them make those shifts when needed in their own journeys.
So how important is it for someone to define success and not have someone else define what success is?
Yeah, right. I mean, someone else defining success is how we live our lives until we wake up. Someone else has told us in high school, in college, this is what you need to do to be successful. And it's total BS, right? It is 100% driven by somebody else's narrative and has nothing to do with us, the individual. There's some wisdom baked into some of it, sure, right? But by and large, it is what causes us so much of our struggle, is trying to just live by somebody else's standards. So I encourage in my book early on, there's two whys that an entrepreneur needs to establish. The why of their business. Why is this business doing what it does? What is this business's purpose and reason to exist in the world? And the second why is why you're doing it. Because we can do, like I said at the beginning, the right things for the wrong reasons. And as long as we're crystal clear and self-aware as to why we're doing it, baked into that why is what is success to us, right? Because if success to us is money and good wine and nice cars, and that's genuinely what you've defined, and you have all your reasons for doing that, then other things don't work in that equation, right? You know, maybe a wife and kids works, maybe it doesn't. Maybe being fit works, maybe it doesn't, right? I'm saying that but it informs the life you're going to live. But if your why of success is being happy, is being present, is being a great father or mother and inspiring your kids to do better than you did, that's a totally different why. And how does your entrepreneurial pursuits lead to that success? Because it absolutely can. You're a successful entrepreneur. You take your kids and you go surfing and you are moving south. You're choosing these things because, and you have the flexibility to do these things because you're an entrepreneur, right? Whereas if you're in the military, you might not have that choice. You have to be at a base, you have to be overseas, whatever, right? So entrepreneurship can lead to a lifestyle and that you want. And so I think it's just really important to get clear on what you want personally and how you define success personally at the beginning of every business that you do, or so that you know why you're doing it.
Sure. And it's important too, even for those that even aren't entrepreneurs, or maybe, those that are looking to excel just even within a company, the same thing,
Yeah.
right? I mean, the same principles apply. At what point did you figure out that you needed these two things, why of the biz and why you're doing it? What age were you? How many times did you have to fail? And then how much did you improve after that, not only as a business owner on the professional side, but also as a husband and a father and a brother, sister, you know what I mean? Like sibling, whatever, child, because all that stuff is impacted.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that, and that's bang on. And I think that we sometimes compartmentalize our lives thinking that this is this thing and this is this thing, and they don't play together, but everything plays together. Everything is part of your own personal ecosystem. That's part of a bigger ecosystem that you exist in. And, we're like, if we're cultivating awareness within ourselves, self-awareness, aware of, oh crap, that's a really nasty thought to think. Why did I just think that thought? What triggered that thought in my mind? And if you don't think about that, you just act on it, then you're not sort of present in your own and part of your own decision making. You're just kind of reacting, right? And self-awareness helps you, which can be achieved through meditation and lots of things, to just take that little step back and have that little pause that gives you a chance to dissect that thought or that experience. So for me, lying in a hospital bed, one of two things can happen. I can say, why am I in this hospital bed? Like, what did I do? Or I can just be like, damn, I'm in this hospital bed and I need to get out of it because I need to get back to work and nothing else matters, right? I'm not aware of like the why. Or I could just be ignorant and be like, I'm just in this bed because I'm sick. But then I didn't ask the question, why am I sick? What led to being here? And so around the time that my wife was very prepared to leave, understandably, I was not present. My best friend, one of my best friends, he died unexpectedly of a heart condition. And I didn't actually know he'd had the condition his whole life. I traveled the world with this guy. He never told me he had a heart condition. And so it was unexpected, but it wasn't totally out of the realm of possibility. He didn't have to be unhealthy for it to happen. And I got on a plane. I went to San Antonio for business the next day, and I couldn't even think. I ended up accidentally driving to Corpus Christi instead of Houston, because I literally I wasn't thinking. I had a rental car and I had to go to Houston for a Nordstrom's store visit and my flight. And I ended up in Corpus Christi. I'm like, where the heck am I? Like, anyway, that's an aside, but he had two young girls like mine. He was 2 years older than me. It was a wake-up call. I was like,
Yeah.
It was the thing that I talk about not changing unless it being worse. It was the wake-up call that began the shift. But change happens on a continuum, right? Like, you can come back from a shamanic journey or a Tony Robbins course, whatever your thing is, and you can feel great for a week or two. Maybe there's even a month halo if you're really lucky. But the decision, the ego creeps back in, the habits creep back in, and you have to, at that point, be conscious about and self-aware about, am I making this change? Am I ready to make this change? And so it was probably at that point a 5-year journey of every day, just a little bit better at being a present husband, a little bit better at being a present father, present son, operating from a more balanced lifestyle and stuff like that. It was a long journey to be where I am today, which is still just a dot somewhere on a long map ahead of me. So.
No, I appreciate you sharing that. So you've done a lot of travel,
Yeah.
right? You've been all over the world. You then go and start this Kassan Travel. Talk to me a little bit about that, and how that started, and just kind of the success that you had, and how, like, your experience with Naked helped you kick this off, and what are some of your plans for Kassan?
Yeah. So because I love travel so much, like so many of us do, and because I'm an entrepreneur, I said, well, how do I combine the thing I love most with business this time around, right? And I wasn't going to start a travel agency or something like that. So we actually did a lot of research, and we did we were trying to find out what were people searching for as it relates to an apparel item in travel. Because when you find something that people are searching for, especially en masse, it informs you that they don't have an answer to that question. So if somebody, in our case, was searching for travel dress, which was the #1 search term in travel apparel, to us, that's signaled they don't know who to go to. They're not going to LL Bean, or they're not going to so-and-so place instinctually, automatically. They don't know. They're looking for a brand. They're looking for information on that topic. So it gave us a good indication that that would be a good place to see if we could find what we call a beachhead product, right? Naked's underwear was a beachhead product that gave us this point of, like, coming in sort of above Calvin and Fruit of the Loom and Jockey and all that stuff, right? And that's where we were going to enter the market. And in the travel space, this dress was our beachhead. We thought this thing could really, carve out a greater space. In Lululemon's case, for those who know, the $4 billion yoga company, it was black stretchy pants for yoga, right? Everyone finds their way in. Successful companies find their way in. So we put this dress on Kickstarter, and it was our second Kickstarter. The first one wasn't that great, and it did $1 million in 30 days in sales. Just under.
That's incredible. That is incredible.
And you know what that tells you? It tells you got a pretty good indication that you have product market fit. You have found a product that people are looking for, and you've priced it at a price they're willing to pay for it, and you scale that. And so, no, when I started Kosan, I didn't think travel dresses. Travel dresses was informed by research, and that became the basis of how we plan to build a much bigger, categorically travel wear company.
Yeah. What do you, in terms of, and you're looking to take this company public as well? Is that correct?
Yeah, we're thinking of it.
Okay. I mean,
yeah.
You've been there, done that. So you do have some experience in that, which is a good thing. What are some of the greatest lessons that you've learned in, one, taking a company public, or two, bringing on investors?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's sort of, pun intended, the $1 million question, right? Because In an ideal world, I would say if you can fund your own business for a period of time, do it, because you can get the business to a point where its value is so great that the dilution taken on by an equity financing of some kind is lessened, right? Unless your your idea is so big, it's a unicorn type idea like Facebook that, Mark Zuckerberg can still own 50, whatever, close to 50% of it or whatever he owns today. I might be wrong about that, but at some point in its maturity, he owned a huge piece of it because the idea was so big. But for most of us, that's not the case. For most of us, the investor is saying, they're looking at other industry comps and they're saying, what do these companies raise money at? And more importantly, when they had liquidity, what value did the market or a buyer give them? And therefore, what's the return on my investment going to be over what period of time, right? And for a high risk company, they're going to want 4, 6, maybe even 10 times return on that investment for high risk company, like apparel, like most of us fail. So,
what is the average? What is the percentage of failure in that industry?
oh gosh,
If you had to guess.
My guess would be 90%.
Wow.
I guess. So, to your original question, raising money can be hard in apparel. It's much harder than SaaS, healthcare, different things. Like you go to them and say, I'm going to invent a vaccine that's going to save the world. Well, in their minds, it's like, as long as you actually can do that, if there's a chance you could do that, they already know there's billions and billions of dollars in value on the other side of that, right? In apparel, that is not the case. So raising money through the angel networks can be challenging because there's also not a lot of guys and gals who invest in these companies who are comfortable in the space. So you go to these rooms and you pitch 100 people in an angel forum, and 2 of them have invested in an apparel deal before. And so it's much harder, right? We're talking about apparel. So leading to the public part of it, going public is, as a microcap company, is a nano cap company, a company that's under 300 million, in most of these cases, under $100 million in valuation, is a route that provides investors more liquidity possibilities because the shares can be traded publicly. So they're not waiting necessarily for an exit. If your market is performing okay, your stock on the market, they might be able to take 10% off and be done with it, right? Versus waiting for a 10 banger. So it provides liquidity, and because of that liquidity, it provides more optionality to raise money, more vehicles and instruments to raise money in. So the challenging part you have to figure out is, well, then how do I, manage a public company, which is just it's just more disclosure, governance, accounting, and legal. That's very simplified, but ultimately it's those things, and ensuring that investors, want to buy into this stock. It's a company they want to play in. And so, whether that's a hedge fund or a retail trader, and when you're small, like Naked was, or Cosign, you're dependent on the retail traders, the Robin Hood guys who, took a lot of flack from Warren Buffett and everybody else, but it's not like Berkshire Hathaway is going to be investing in a nano cap company anytime soon, right?
Right.
So it's just another mechanism to raise capital when it may otherwise be hard to do. And COVID was not kind to a travel clothing company. And we had actually gone through the angel forums, and we had $1 million Canadian circled, sub agreements out there, subscription agreements. And it was like one of these more stressful weeks in my life that led to some of this gray hair, is that overnight, with signed to sub agreements, that $1 million disappeared. Guys are like, I know I signed it, but I'm not sending you the money. We're in a global pandemic with however many years of uncertainty ahead. I didn't think that was a bad decision on their part, but it materially affected a lot. And so we just felt at the end of this year, going public will would give us a chance to capitalize the company, no matter, the economic headwinds or industry headwinds, et cetera. And so that's part of the reason we're looking at it.
Sure. What were some of what were some of the adjustments that you made? You had to obviously pivot. Here comes
Yeah.
COVID. You're in the travel industry. That is completely shut down. No one is moving anywhere. People are trying to figure out what is going on with life. I mean, you talk about your investors. We have no idea how long this is going to be.
Yeah.
We had the same kind of like thoughts. Okay, what did you do at that time to say, all right, guess what? We need to step back, look at this, and we're going to do X, Y, and Z. What were some of the ideas and decisions that you made in order to make sure that you stayed above water?
Yeah.
Or below water, but you still have a little bit of oxygen left?
That's a great question. I think this is one of the reasons businesses succeed or fail is their ability to pivot to the necessary spot, even if it's just a 10% pivot or 15% pivot to get to a place where you have product market fit at all times, right? And I always think about the Instagram example, and what Instagram was when he first came up with it, and just a little bit of the pivot this location-based picture sharing to what it became was enough to turn an okay idea into a multi-billion dollar idea. And I can guilty of being myopic at times, but so we looked at the thing, and our sales went from good to zero in the span of like a week, right? And we're like, oh crap. So we shifted to PPE. We just put our manufacturing contacts to work, made masks, brought in goggles, and it's what I would deem it was still a risk, because it's still the Wild West. Now everyone's buying PPE. Nobody knows how the heck to buy PPE, how much to buy of it. They're certainly not going to like pre-book it. It's like either happening or not. The big dogs in the space, do they have it covered, or is there really room for little guys like us coming in? And so some of our investors lent us money. I think we borrowed a few $100,000, and we bought some PPE, and it was okay. We sold some PPE, and we were at the table of like a lot of very big deals, multi-million-dollar deals that we didn't get just because they ended up going with the big companies 100% of the time, at least up here in Canada, and we couldn't really sell cross border. But it was enough to keep the pulse in the business. And I think the mistake I made, we also didn't want to alienate the travel angle, because we felt like if we alienated travel and went to like lifestyle, dresses, athleisure, outdoor, our customers would no longer differentiate us from the myriad customers or brands out there in those spaces. And we thought it was maybe not the right idea. Again, I'm not sure that was the correct answer, but either way, we survived. We're here. Business is sort of back to where it was just before COVID. So I should say just before the lockdowns, not just before COVID. Like that month before the lockdowns is kind of where I am today. So hopefully it's the opposite trajectory.
Sure. How are you marketing your Kassan, travel wear?
We're still marketing as travel, like
what are you guys doing? Like, what are some of your marketing strategies? Are you
Sorry.
IG? Are you Facebook? What are you guys using in order to get your name out there and keep sales going? And is it Amazon?
Yeah. Amazon's good.
Okay.
Amazon causes some challenges from a warehousing perspective, because if you're a vendor with Amazon, you have to commit to shipping within 24 hours of an order being placed, 100%, including weekends. And we don't like putting a ton of our inventory we don't like separating our inventory between Amazon's warehouses and ours, just because we're small, and that's a lot of extra cost to have sort of 4 different 3PLs running, third-party logistics companies. So we do a little bit of Amazon with our smaller items. We don't do our bigger items there yet, but it's always been good to us. At Naked here, Amazon's always been a good place to do business. It's the largest store in the world. I mean,
Sure.
So we focus heavily on email and historically Facebook ads, because and then now influencer, micro influencer, IG, TikTok hasn't really ramped up. But the reason we love Facebook ads so much is, 1, they work, and 2, it's just so easy to measure. If the ad isn't tracking a 3 to 4 to 1 return on ad spend, we change it. We can change it daily, weekly, whatever, right? And so we're always either every dollar in spits a dollar out, or $4 or $5 out, right? And so it's a really, if you do it the way it's supposed to be done, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, and it's not, you're not just guessing like you are. It's like, did this micro influencer drive sales? Maybe, maybe not, but you have no way of knowing that going in, right? So that's a much more, it's a strategy that you can run if you have the bandwidth and to run it, right? In terms of dollars available. Whereas Facebook is much more deliberate and objective based, and it can be turned off if it's not working. So you're not just bleeding cash into something every day, which is a huge mistake we all make.
Yeah.
We get this idea in our head that some marketing activation, be it a celebrity, a billboard, of whatever, is going to work. But we actually, in today's day and age, can know for almost 100% certain whether or not something's going to work if we just use data to inform our decisions as much as possible. And or stop the bleeding before it's too late. And that's, I think, a big difference between if a company makes it and doesn't make it.
Sure. Sure. So you have all your experiences. You're doing coaching now too as well. What are you seeing, or what would you say some of the challenges of these companies that you're working with? What would you say are like at the top, 1 or 2 or 3 challenges you're seeing in companies today that that you can offer some suggestions or ideas on? Hey, try this, try that.
Well, again, the data
From a
piece is
broad.
yeah. I mean, data is huge, but I always say, like, the business is a lot simpler than people think when it comes to consumer product goods. We are the ones who make it difficult. And I'm not saying that means that it's going to be successful 100% of the time. You like you mentioned shiny objects. That's bang on, right? If you understand what your beachhead product is, your product that can penetrate this market as a differentiated offering that you can win on. If you can define what your hedgehog strategy is, which is what Jim Collins refers to as, what can you be it's one single thing that you can be the best at the world in the world at. So if you can define that, if you can then, having established product market fit, scale your business in a disciplined way, you are giving yourself the best chance of success. But it's the same thing with every business, some of mine included, but we get distracted. We expand our product lines beyond our beachheads too fast. We waste good money that can have a return on ad spend by saying, I'm going to make this product and I'm going to make this product. Then these products don't work, or they don't work nearly as well, and you just wasted all that growth capital on these other things. When, if we want to tackle, if I'm in the business of wanting to beat Lululemon, hypothetically, I'm not going to beat Lululemon at yoga. I'm not going to make a better yoga pant than Lululemon, right? So I have to define what it is that's going to be the needle that allows me to poke that giant's toe, and focus on that only, and eventually get the rest of it, right? And so for me, when I go into a company, it's always that same story. What are we editing back to as our focus, as our hedgehog, as our beachhead, as our MVP? so that we're not wasting all this money here and just spinning our wheels and wondering why things aren't working. So it's almost 100% of the time, it's just that.
Love it. Love it. No, excellent insight. So as you know, the tagline for the opposite entrepreneur is watching the masses and doing the opposite. So curious to know what that looks like to you, or what that means.
Yeah, that's a good one, mate. I always think that like what's so great about doing the opposite, if you can like if you can do it, it's like, I think comparison is the end of all joy. You do something really good, you compare it to the masses or you compare it to other people, it's done. You've lost your joy in it. I think if you're trying to be a Me Too brand of some kind, you're not going to have success. And so I don't believe in like being different for the sake of being different, but I believe that if you just focus on what it is that who it is that you are and who it is that, or what it is that you're trying to do, and just forget about the masses, I think you are in that case opposite, because so many people are just following the herd. And that's where you're not only going to have success, you're going to have fulfillment. You're going to feel like you're living your life the way that you want to live it. And I think that leads to the happiest people is being themselves in that and not following going the opposite way of what everyone else is doing. So
I love it. You hit the nail right on the head. And one of the things I like to do is just some of the talking points that really stuck out to me. And it's so funny when I do these. There's always so many nuggets that my guests deliver, and you crushed it too as well today. And two things of why people should start a business, or to understand, is the why of the business, the purpose, and then why you're doing it. You just shared comparison is the end of all joy. That just wowed me. That just wowed me. And I couldn't agree with that more. Another point that you had, success is self-defined. Totally agree. Again, that touches really on, the comparison point too, as well. And then how important self-awareness is to success, not only professionally, but even more importantly, on the personal side. And basically your story in the beginning of Naked, which you knew nothing about business or apparel or anything, but you had an idea, you had a dream, and you understood that there was a problem that you were experiencing that you felt that you could be a solution to, and you went with it and you figured it out. You figured out along the way, what you needed to learn, who you needed to talk to, and just keep asking questions and failing forward. So those are just the nuggets, some of the nuggets that I felt in terms of the high level ones from today. So I appreciate you sharing that, not only with me, but with our listeners. So how can our listeners, connect with you further, and where can they find your book? And let's talk about you and what they can do in order to connect.
awesome. Thank you. Thanks for summarizing that. I couldn't remember what I said. So you're so in it that my website, joelprimus.com, has a lot of blogs that I try and just give away what I've learned for free there. It's all there. You can learn a lot from my mistakes or from advice mentors have shared with me on my blog, joelprimus.com, which is also where you can check out my book. Right now it's only available on Amazon, which is coming to an end shortly, and then it will be available Barnes and Nobles and Chapters up here in Canada, etc. And that's Getting Naked: The Bare Necessities of Entrepreneurship and Startups. I'm sometimes on Instagram, and sometimes I hate social media and I'm not. So you could check out Joel Primus, Joel.Primus on Instagram, and maybe I'll be there. But
well, you got to be on there if you're gonna have travel apparel. Come on.
Oh, my company's on there. It's like whether or not I'm on there. No, it's good. It's been a good platform to help grow businesses for sure.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, Joel, thank you so much for joining us on The Opposite Entrepreneur today, and just sharing your experience and your wisdom. I absolutely learned so much from you. I appreciate it, and best of luck with everything that you're working on. And I look forward to reading your book. So please, I want to get a copy. I want to get a signed copy.
Yeah, I'll send you a signed copy. No problem.
Awesome. Awesome.
Thanks for
Thanks
having
so
me.
much for joining us.
Bye.
Appreciate it.